Okay, I think we're working. This is going to be the recording lecture on integument. It's the last portion before exam number 1. This is about the 5th time I've recorded it, and somehow the link doesn't get to you. But regardless, we're going to get you. So I got to go up here and get this thing to react for me. Just hang tight. I'm trying to get it shared screen. There we go. There we go. There we go. And here we go. I want it bigger. There we go. Okay, you should see me up in your upper right-hand corner. Sorry, this is going a little quick. I didn't have time to put on a shirt and tie for you, but I want to get this out before, so you have time to study it before the exam. Okay, now in your module, it's under week 2, day 1, and it says integumentary system, chapter exam number 1, or something along that line. Okay, I want you to, now right at the very top of it, it gives you the link that you can download the slides, which is what you're going to see right over there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the slides, and if I were you, I would take excellent notes. What's nice about a recorded thing is you can pause it, back it up, and listen to it again, because the stuff I'm taking that's coming out of my mouth is going to be up on your exam. Don't just look at the slides and go, okay, I got this. They mean nothing. It's because I do a very brief outline and put it up here for you, and then I talk about it in detail. Okay, so here we go. Don't worry about the copy of the text. I think this is a 4th edition or something like that. You guys are up on the 6th. All right. Now, as with all my with all of my lectures, I begin with outline. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And each bullet that I do on the outline, I'll go into detail in a bunch of different slides. Okay? So this is just telling you what we're going to be talking about, and I'll talk a little bit about it. And then we'll get into the meat of it. I try and use colors. Red meaning something that is going to be a topic. Black is just, the meat of it. Sometimes if it's a word or a definition, I'll put it in purple or blue or something like that. Okay? So I try and be continuous throughout the lecture. Here we go, outline. Structure and function of the integumentary system. What is your skin for? Now, remember we said there was 11 systems in the body. This is one of them. It's the largest, and it's the first one we talk about. Okay? So what is the structure? What is our skin made of? You're going to find out that there's 2 sublayers. And what is its function? We know what the function is. Keep our stuff on the inside that's supposed to be on the inside, and the things on the outside. Yeah? But we're also going to find that we produce vitamin D in our skin. We fight off invaders with our skin. The second layer, which is the dermis, has all the blood and stuff like that. So that's just a couple of things we're going to see. The first layer, the outsidemost layer, so if you touch your skin, you're touching the epidermis. Epi above, dermis, above the dermis. Okay? That's just your skin, the part that takes a beating and stuff like that. That's the epidermis. And you're going to find that there's 5 subcategories, and we call them strata. Underneath that is the big one. It's the dermis, okay? And that is mostly dense, irregular, and we've seen that in our lab, huh? And then the dermis, which I just got through talking about. So the epidermis and dermis are the 2 components of the integumentary system, or skin, okay? Subcutaneous layer, also called the hypodermis, we see right here, both words mean the same thing, are always associated with the integumentary system, but it's not part of the system. This is the one that's where we store our fat. So if we went from the top of your skin and we went down We would go epidermis, then dermis, then subcutaneous or hypodermis. Got it? And then we'd go to muscle. And then we would go to bone. And then we go right back out the other side with muscle, subcutaneous layer, dermis, and epidermis, and we'd be out the other side. Do you understand? Okay. After we go through those and the sub layers and the type of tissue that makes it up, we're going to talk about structures that are derived from the epidermis, like hair and your fingernails. Good. Epidermal ridges, your fingerprints that you left at the crime scene. And then how do we repair it or regenerate our skin? You've probably heard that your outside epidermal layer is always being sloughed off. Yes? Is that true? The answer is yes, it is. Okay, we're going to learn more about that. And then, of course, the aging of the integumentary system. It would be great if we found the fountain of youth, but it isn't out there. I've looked for it. Aging, what happens? How do we get wrinkles? How do we get sun blotches? How do we look old? Okay, you're going to find that the dermal layer, which is composed heavily of a connective tissue called dense irregular, is made up of a lot of proteins. And we stop producing our protein production lessens as we get older. And what happens is that dermal layer that's nice and thick becomes thinner and the skin on the outside starts to sag. We call that wrinkles. Okay, I don't have a single one. And then development of the integumentary system, no. Exclude that. It's in your textbook, and it's there if you're going to do embryology, but we're not going to talk about it here. Good? All right, here we go. Integumentary structure. Integument is the same thing as skin. Integument is the same thing as skin. Okay? It's the largest organ. I already mentioned this. The first one we've talked about, and it's the largest. Duh. It is composed of two layers. I just talked about that. What I would like you to do right now is pause this and then think about what the two layers are. Okay, now you've paused it. You're saying, oh yeah, I remember the outside layer is called the epidermis. And the next layer is called the dermis. The epidermis does not have any blood supply in it. The dermis is the one that feeds it all the blood and nutrients and stuff like that. It says right here, the epidermis is the superficial layer of stratified squamous epithelium. We saw that in lab, didn't we? Didn't we? I had you draw it several times using microscope slides. And what we were viewing in the microscope, which was actually loaded into slides on this. The dermis, that's the second layer. It's deeper and it's composed of areolar and dense irregular. And I talked about dense irregular, but right in the dermal papilla, right where the epidermis and dermis touch, there's like little fingers that stick up. And in between those fingers is areolar connective tissue, not very thick. And then there's the dense, which is very, very thick. Good. And then the subcutaneous layer, hypodermis, not part of the skin, lies under the dermis, composed mostly of adipose tissue. Okay, so when we have very little adipose tissue, body fat, we can see muscle indentations very well. Sometimes we call it getting cut. You can see the six pack, for an example. You can see muscles in your arm very good. Got it? That's because you don't have much of a layer of fat. So when it comes through the skin, you see the muscle come through the skin. If we are heavily composed, I don't know how the heck to put that, of adipose tissue. In other words, we've got layers of adipose tissue. You can't see the muscle. Okay. Now, adipose tissue does have function, and the main function is a source of energy if we need it. We can break down fat very readily in the mitochondria and produce ATP. It also provides a thermal break. Yeah. We as mammals have hair and fat to keep us what we call homeothermic. Homeothermic means the same body temperature all the time. Birds have the same thing, but instead of having hair, they have feathers. And since they have to fly, they have very little fats, they have to have a lot of feathers. And they are homeothermic. Got it? Other organisms like reptiles, amphibians, and fish, they're poikiothermic. They change. Okay? Now, none of that's going to be on the exam. Just want you to talk about the importance of fat. Okay, structures of the integumentary system. This picture you've seen at the beginning of chapter 5, and I had you draw it in lab. I said, draw a picture of a piece of skin and label it. This is what I wanted you to do. And then I said, next to it, draw one that you see in your microscope. And it didn't look like this. And we had to use anywhere from 4 to 5 slides to try and see all this. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. I had you draw the epidermis and the 5 strata. 1, 2, 3, 4. This only has 4 because it's not thick skin. If it was thick skin, there'd be another layer right here. And we call that strata or sublayers. And remember, there's a mnemonic, spelling M-N-E-M-O-N-I-C. That means like a little riddle or a little saying that helps us with memory recall. I think you probably remember one when you were in school about the rainbow, Roy G. Biv. Well, that's kind of like it, but here's an actual mnemonic. Our solar system, from the sun to the planets out to the end, is my very easy method just set up 9 planets. My very easy method just set up 9 planets. So if you go to the sun, my is Mercury, very Venus, easy Earth, method Mars, all the way out. And let's not argue about Pluto being out there or not. And that was a good way to remember because the planets make no sense. But if we have a little mnemonic, boom, we have it instantly. Well, here's the mnemonic for the epidermis. Boys, basala, say, spinosum, girls, granulosum. Now the one that's missing here is lucidum, like chocolate, corneum. Boys say girls like chocolate. Basala, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, corneum. See how that worked? Okay, so anyway, in one of the slides I had you draw in lab, I wanted you to draw this and label it. Okay, so that is the epidermis. And that's not labeled on here. If you can find it in your text, and if you bought the atlas to histology, you have it right there all laid out for you. Or you can do the thing and Google it. Go Google strata of the epidermis and it'll list them for you. Now from here, all the way down to where you see the fat, that is the dermal layer. And I talked about that. That's the dermis is the second of the 2 layers of the skin. It is subdivided into 2 layers. The papillary layer, which is right here where I talked about the dermal papilla made of areolar connective tissue, and the reticular layer, which is the thick one. And I said that's where your hair follicles are at, Pacinian corpuscles are there, sweat glands are there. I'm pointing to them as I do it. This is the erector pili, the muscle that causes your hair to stand up. Okay, so let's go over here to the side. It says integument. Do you see that? And then it says epidermis. That's from here up. 5 strata. I just told you that. And then the dermis, which is from here all the way down to here, which has 2 subcategories. Papillary layer made out of areolar connective tissue, and the thicker one, the reticular layer, that has all this stuff and it's made out of dense irregular. All this stuff in there. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. That's the dermis. Then the subcutaneous, which is always talked about when we do the integumentary system, but it's not part of it. Okay. And that's most of that is adipose tissue and areolar again. So what we find up here in the papillary layer, we also find down here in the subcutaneous or hypo below dermis layer. Good? Okay. So that was a picture. Functions of the integument. Think about it. Okay, pause this and think about what is the function of your skin. Okay. Okay, now you've come back after thinking about it and you had a whole bunch of things that you probably wrote down. Does it offer protection? Yes. Does it make vitamin D from the sun being stimulated? Yes. Does it protect you from ultraviolet rays? Yes. Melanocytes produce melanin and that blocks it out so you don't get skin cancer. Okay. Does it help you in cooling the body? Sweat goes to the surface, it evaporates, makes your skin cold. You vasodilate blood vessels to your skin. It gets cold, runs it back down to the core of your body and cools your body. That's what sweating is for. And this time, when it's hot outside, if you are not sweating and it is hot, you run out of water. You're going to get a heat stroke like I did. Okay, protection, you got it right. Prevention of water loss, you got it right. Temperature regulation, I just talked about it. Metabolic regulation, okay, vitamin D and stuff. And immune defense. We think that our white blood cells are only in our blood, but there are some that come out of the blood supply and work its way through the dermal layer and a little bit of the epidermis, looking to see if any bacteria or viruses or something got in there not supposed to be, and it'll kill it. Good? And sensory reception. Okay? If you have hair and a fly lands on your hair, you can feel it right away, right? Unless you don't have any. Okay? But that sensory reception and also a little bit of excretion. About 10% of fluid waste goes through your skin to the surface, along with that water that cooled you, a little bit of salt, a little bit of urine there. Epidermis, outermost layer. Now I'm going to do boys say girls like chocolate. Okay. Epithelium of the skin. Epithelium of the skin. Okay. Outermost layer are broken down into strata. Number one, it's avascular. Now these are characteristics. Epidermis is made out of epithelium of your skin, the outermost layer, and it is avascular. Now, when you see an A out in front, that means without. If you see an AN, same thing, means without. If you see vascular, that means blood supply, without blood supply. You see that? It's keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Now, when I had you look in the microscope, I want you to look at stratified squamous epithelium. All those cells, the stratified squamous epithelium of your skin, are keratinized. What that means is it produces a protein called keratin. Keratin is elastic and waterproof. Elastic and waterproof. Waterproof, water resistant, waterproof. I like waterproof. You could actually put keratinized when you look under the microscope and you see those 5 strata. You can say, I'm looking at keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. That's okay. And if you put it on your lab exam, that is okay. I'm only targeting this. Stratified, which means layers, squamous, which means flat. You already know that. And epithelium. Classification. We have 4 classifications of tissue: epithelium, connective, nervous, and muscle. Are we good? I'm not going to waste time on this because you guys already have this nailed. It's composed of 4 to 5 layers called strata. Now, if it's regular skin, there's 4. If it's thick skin, there are 5. Got it? 4 and 5 strata. Okay, here we go. Let's name them. Remember, pause this, go back, think. What is the 5 strata? Start with the deepest one. Deepest one, simple, basal, basala, yeah? So deep to superficial. First one you're going to have is stratum basala. Okay, what was the next one? Boys, what? Say, spinosum. Then what? Girls, granulosum. And then this one may or may not be there unless you have thick skin. Lucidum, found only in thick skin. And the last one is the one that sloughs off, called corneum. Corneum. And in thick skin, it's really thick. And in regular skin, it's not as 15, 20 layers. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the characteristic of stratum basala. Characteristics of stratum basala. Single layer cells that are capable of mitosis. So you know that if you lose a cell, you got to replace it. That's kind of like a no-brainer, right? The process of replacing cells, cell replication, it's almost like cell cloning, is called mitosis. And you've had this, you looked at it in the microscope, you looked at cells in mitosis, and you're familiar with interphase and mitosis and prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. Meiosis we talked about, making of the sex cell. And then we have meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. It goes through it twice. Are we good? Now, I'm doing this quickly because you already should know this. You can pause this and go back and listen to it again, okay? Cells are adjacent to the dermis. Now, we're talking about characteristics of stratum basala, okay? Cells are adjacent to the dermis. Cell types. Now, look at this. We talked about keratinocytes. It's actually pronounced keratinocytes. Keratinocytes. Cytes, cells, keratin produces protein. It's full of protein. Most of your skin cells are made out of keratinocytes. That means you have the genetic code that's going to make a cell. It's going to have a plasma membrane, nucleus, all that kind of stuff. And the DNA that's triggered is to produce the protein keratin. There's also melanocytes. Okay, now your book says melanocytes is brown. It's not, it's black. Again, cytes, let me get my little arrow. Cytes that produce melanin. Melanin, cells that produce the pigment melanin. Okay, the more melanin you have, the darker your skin. Genetically, some people have more melanocytes. I don't have very many. Other peoples with real light skin, dark skin, have a lot of them. That means as soon as the ultraviolet rays strikes their skin, they produce melanin, and it puts a protective shield around their DNA. So they're not as susceptible to cancer, okay? That's what that means. Absorbs UV light to prevent DNA damage. And there's also tactile cells in there, which are sensitive to touch. We'll get to those. I'm going to show you a picture. So here's a picture. Here's thick skin. Remember, light microscope, 25 magnifications? And here's a drawing. And then here's your layers. See corneum, lucidum, granulosum, spinosum, basala. Do it the other way. Boys say girls like chocolate, see? And then this layer right here is stratum basala. Now you can see the brown cells right there. Those are melanocytes. They're producing melanin, so they show up brown, okay? If we didn't have melanocytes, we'd have more clear like this, okay? So then here's a drawing. Basala, basala, spinosum, granulosum, lucidum, corneum. This is thick skin. This happens to be a sweat gland. This is a tactile cell. This is a dendritic cell. Now, you think dendritic cell, you're thinking, oh, I've heard that term. Dendritic must be dendrites, has something to do with the nervous system. Nope. Those are the cells that are moving around to try and find evaders before they can get down into the dermal layer. So what you have is you have this cell, which is a motile cell moving along in here, waiting for an invader, maybe because you got cut or something, and it sees it and it gets it before it gets into the dermis, where it can get into your blood supply. Good? And then there's a melanocyte, which they're just pointing to a little cell that produces melanin. Does it produce keratin? Well, it can, but the keratin has been shut off, okay? It's been shut off, and it says you just produce melanin if I tell you to. Get it? Okay, the next one, spinosum. Now, in your book, it'll say spinosums and sometimes go through mitosis. No, let's just go, mitosis is isolated to basala, period. Spinosum is just the cells that's moving towards the surface that's producing keratin, the protein keratin. That's all. That means the nucleus, DNA, blood supply in there, that the nutrients it's got from the blood supply from the dermal layer is cranking out keratin. Got it? And then as it gets to the next layer, granulosum, it starts to die. The nucleus starts to die. And all you have is a balloon full of keratin. Okay, it says it's several layers thick. Daughter cells from stratum basala differentiate into non-dividing, highly specialized keratinocytes. We're not talking about melanocytes, we're just talking about keratinocytes now. Okay? Dendritic cells are here. Remember, I just showed you the picture. The dendritic cells are here. Those are the ones that are going after invaders. Immune cells that help and fight infection. Good. Phagocytes that initiate an immune response. Phagocytes that initiate immune response. Okay, let's go back to this. Cytes, cells, phago, to eat. Cells that go along and eat invaders. That's the dendritic cells. Okay, granulosum. Now think about this. Basala, cells that are undergoing mitosis. They have a blood supply coming up from beneath in the dermal layer. It's giving nutrients to those cells that are going through mitosis. And then your DNA, your keratinocytes or your melanocytes or whatever are doing their thing as they move through the spinosum. When they get to granulosum, they start flattening out like bricks and the nucleus is all but dead. Okay, so it's kind of like a transition leading into dead cell. It's 3 to 5 layers. 3 to 5 layers of keratinocytes. Okay, and you guys calling me. Okay. Cytoplasm fills with keratin filaments. Okay, don't worry about filaments. It's keratin. It is a protein. They call proteins filaments. Okay, so that's what's in your granulosum. Okay, the cells are keratinocytes. Your melanocytes and all that stuff is still down at the basal layer. It doesn't break free and move to the surface. Organelles begin to degrade. In other words, the cell's dying. Fully keratinized cells are dead but strong. We talked about that characteristic. Extracellular lipids form epidermal water barrier. Remember I said it was waterproof? Well, that's the characteristic of a keratinocyte, period. Okay, next one, lucidum. Remember, lucidum is only on, hold on, I'm going to pause this so you don't have to listen to this. Okay, whoops. Made that small. Let me get back to making that big again. Okay, remember we said lucidum was the layer that may or may not be there. It's only there if it's thick skin, okay? And we have another protein being produced there, and I'll show you what that is in just a minute. It's a very thin layer, 2 to 3 layers, okay? But because it's injecting another protein, it allows it to get the corneum to get very thick. Okay, present only in thick skin, hands and soles of feet, palms, okay, palms. That's not on the back side, on the front side, palm side, soles of feet. There it is, alledin. Alledin is the other protein, and what alledin does, even though keratin is one of the main proteins, alledin allows it to be more elastic and it doesn't slough off as quick. Got it? Only found in lucidum. Corneum, most superficial. Okay, that's the one that sloughs off. Thickness varies from 20 to 30 layers depending on location of the body. Now that's regular. Okay, so if it's on your arms, probably going to be 30 layers. If it's the inside of your mouth, probably 15, 20 layers, okay? Places that are abrased, in other words, it's being roughed up, like your arms, it's always going to be towards the 30. The stuff that's not inside of your ears and stuff like that, it's going to be thinner. You don't have to worry about where it is, thick or not. All you have to know is the stratum corneum in regular skin is 20 to 30 layers. In thick skin, palms of hands, bottoms of your feet, can be 100. Okay? Okay? All right. Composed solely of dead keratinocytes. Got it? There's nothing live about the cells on the end. Can you take a pin and poke it into your skin at the very top and not feel it? Yeah, and if you go too deep, you can feel it, okay? Because it's just dead cells, okay? Sloughed off by abrasion. Now, look at that first word right there, sloughed off, because it comes off when we do reproductive system. Slough means to come off. Slough means to come off by abrasion. Okay, variations in the epidermis. Thick versus thin skin. Had you look at this in the microscope, didn't I? And you could see it really easy. You might not see lucidum too good, but it's there. Once you practice it, you can. And you can always Google it to see what it does like. But you'll notice the corneum is huge versus thin skin, okay? It's really kind of like thick and thin. It's actually regular skin and thick skin, okay? Anyway, thick skin has all 5 layers because you have the extra palms and feet. Thin skin, regular skin, lacks stratum lucidum. We talked about that. Okay, picture. Here we go. Now, I had you look at a slide that had pigmented versus non-pigmented. Okay, there's pigmented. You always have that brown layer, and it's not brown, it's black. But because it's not a whole bunch of black, you see it as brown because as it makes its way through the skin and to your eye, it looks brown. Okay? That's why some people have brown skin. Some people have really light brown skin. Some people have really, really dark black skin. It's because the amount of the amount of melanocytes they have genetically. Okay? There's a case of a skin defect called albinism where they don't have any. Yes? Okay. Anyway, getting back to my point. This is stratum corneum. It looks like little strings. I understand that. Here's stratum corneum on thick skin. Do you see it? Okay. Basala, spinosum. Basala down here. Spinosum. Granulosum. Granulosum, kind of hard to see there. And no lucidum. And right there, that's lucidum. Good. And I have them pointed out for you here and here. Okay. Boys say girls like chocolate. Characteristics of the epidermis. Skin color. Okay. These are characteristics. What kind of skin color can you have? Okay. Don't get offended. What kind of skin color can you have? Well, I can have black. I can have brown. I can have white. And I can have anything in between, can't I? Okay. I can even have a yellow-orange tint, can't I? Well, that means it has to be some type of pigment, right? We already talked about melanin and melanocytes. Melanocytes are genetically triggered to produce melanin, which is a black pigment. We also have keratinocytes, and I'll show you how that's spelled in a minute. It's not like keratinocytes. This is keratin with a C, like carrot. And that produces a pigment yellow-orange. Okay, and then we have red. You've seen people that have red skin. That's from blood. Okay. Okay. The hemoglobin in blood. You know, what's hemoglobin in blood? I thought red blood cells, hemoglobin, same thing. Nope. Hemoglobin is an enzyme on a red blood cell that transports oxygen. Okay. And it gives it the red color because iron is in hemoglobin. Heme is iron, is in that. It's attached to a red blood cell, so it gives it the red color. There you go. Hemoglobin, blood pigment, red in color. Melanin, black pigment, produced by melanocytes, increase Now, this is what I want you to remember. People that are exposed to ultraviolet radiation are better off if they have a lot of melanin. So if you have light colored skin and you lay out and you get tan, what your body's trying to do is protect you from the ultraviolet rays. People that are born with a lot of melanocytes, then as soon as the ultraviolet rays hit them, it triggers melanin and they're protected right away. Keratin, yellowish orange pigment. We get it from foods, okay? But it's also produced in cells. You have genetic code for that. Production of melanin. Okay, here's a picture. You may have seen this one under your microscope. Might not have been blue. Some of them I had in lab were blue. This is melanocytes, full of melanin. Got it? Here's your epidermis. Here's your dermis. Light microscope, 124 times magnified. Here's a melanocyte producing melanin. And what they're trying to show you, see the little specks you see? That's melanin, okay? And it kind of stays right in here. Okay. Abnormal skin colors. I put these down. You don't have to know them, but I make reference to albinism. They don't have any melanocytes, zero. They made a movie a long time ago called Powder. It was about this guy who had albinism. And it isn't just classified to one type of race. It can happen to any race, okay? Ethnic background. Anyway, they don't have any genetic code for any melanocytes, period. Makes them real susceptible to ultraviolet rays, burning of the skin, burning of the eyes, red eyes, okay? Red eyes are lacking the pigment for you in your iris. So you don't see red eyes, you see the blood back in there, not protected. Okay. Hematoma is like a strawberry. Okay. And some people are born with them on their skin, a hematoma. Jaundice, you've heard of that. When we don't break down bilirubin, it picks up in the skin. And bilirubin has kind of an orangish yellow color. So when we see it coming through the skin, we can see it. Easiest to tell around the whites of the eyes. Okay, skin markings. I want to talk a little bit about this. Skin marking. What do you mean? Nevus. Nevus is a mole. I got one right here. See it? Okay, that's a nevus. The most famous nevus was Marilyn Monroe. And when she was in her height of public awareness, women would sometimes take a pencil, I don't know what the heck you call it, but like, you put on your eyebrows or eyelashes or whatever, and they'd make a little nevus because they thought that was, cool, okay? But a nevus is a mole. Hemangioma. When you abrase yourself, you fall down and you skin your arm, and it looks like a straw. We call it a strawberry. If you played baseball and you didn't slide right, you got a strawberry. That's called a hemangioma. You can also have them from birth, that they're just there underneath the skin. Friction ridges. These are your fingerprints that you leave at crime scenes, okay? What happens is, go back into, remember when we did the papillary layer, right, where the epidermis and the dermis touch? Well, on your fingers, on your palms of your fingers, that didn't come out right, on the palm surface on your fingers and on your sole surface of your toes, okay, you have, those are pronounced. In other words, that papillary layer pushes out really far and gives you friction ridges. And the function of the friction ridges are so you can grasp things, okay? Now you're thinking, I can't even see them. How can I grasp something? Okay, go sand them off. I'm not telling you to do this, but sand them off. People that work around concrete, they come off right away. And then try and pick up a piece of paper. You can't do it. Pick up a dollar bill. You can't do it until they grow back. And they will grow back, okay? Friction ridges are found in thick skin. Now, you do not have to worry about an arch or a whorl or a loop or combination, okay? Now, this used to be the way they found and determined bad guys at a scene, okay? They would leave back fingerprints, and now they go for DNA, because this does not exclude everyone. People can have very similar fingerprints. So they use anywhere from 10 to 14 sites. So what they do is they say, okay, I'm going to pick here, 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 and I'm going to compare them to what I've taken at the crime scene. And if they match, that's recognized in a court of law as a match. Okay. DNA is absolute. Okay. You don't have to remember that. Just know friction ridges are caused from the dermis, areolar connective tissue, pushing up on the epidermis and giving you those friction ridges for grip. Now let's go to the next layer, dermis. Lies deep to the epidermis. That means it's underneath it. Okay. Remember, there's two subdivisions. Pause this and tell me what those two subdivisions are. Pause it. I mean this. This is how you learn. Okay. Get you involved. Okay. Now you came back and you said, oh, yeah, I remember the one right at the top in the papillary layer. Papillary layer is areolar connective tissue. You are absolutely right. And the thicker one underneath it is in the reticular layer, and that is dense irregular. Okay? Both connective tissue. All right. Composed of areolar and dense irregular. We just talked about that, huh? Areolar is in the papillary layer of the dermis, and dense irregular is in the reticular layer. Good? Two sublayers. Papillary layer, I'm repeating this, okay? But I want you to also pick up that dermis is what we're talking about, and that's in red. And then I put the green saying the two layers of tissue are areolar and dense irregular. And then I went down and take these two layers, and then I changed the color to P for papillary, which is areolar, and reticular, which is dense irregular. And it's the thickest. Good? You see how I put it together? Okay. I'm going to ask you questions on the exam on this. Make sure you have it nailed. Layers of the dermis. Okay. Now, this is kind of cool. You have this in your textbook, and you have it in the, if you bought the atlas. This is epidermis, and it's been peeled back. And then this, from here all the way down to here, is the dermal layer. And these bumps that stick up are called papilla. They used to put this on beds, and they said it was supposed to be for more comfort. But since then, they don't do that too much anymore, and now they use Tempur-Pedic and all kinds of stuff. I guess they have a new one called Purple or something. Anyway, from about here to here, this right here, this papilla is made out of areolar connective tissue. All of this is dense irregular. This is the papillary layer. This is the reticular layer of the dermis. Got it? And up here is the epidermis, which is the strata. Boys say girls like chocolate. Okay? And then this is one we always associate, the subcutaneous or hypodermis. And it says areolar connective tissue and adipose tissue. That's what's in here. Are we good? This is not part of the dermis. Good? Okay. Papillary layer of the dermis, directly adjacent to the epidermis. Okay? Now we're going down. Okay? So right when we leave stratum basala, the next thing is the papillary layer of the dermis. Still the dermis, but it's the papillary layer of the dermis, means it's subdivided into two, and it's made out of areolar connective tissue. Good? Dermal papilla, epidermal ridges, we talked about that, yes? Fingerprints, epidermal ridges, fingerprints. Pushed, the papillary layer pushes up, and it makes your skin, your corneum, irregular, and we call it fingerprints. Good? Dermal papilla contain the capillaries that supply nutrients to the epidermis, specifically stratum basala. Okay? Reticular layer, this is the thick one. Majority of the dermis, composed of dense irregular. Now, reason it says comprised mainly of, we also have muscle in there, the erector pili. We have sweat glands in there, which are epidermis. We have a blood supply. We have a bunch of junk like that, yes? So the main thing is dense irregular, which are bundles of collagen. Big one, that's another protein. So we've talked about 2 proteins so far. No, 3 proteins so far. We talked about keratin, Allelin, and now collagen. Collagen, the reason it's called dense irregular is you have bundles of proteins, of collagen protein bundles. And instead of laying them down nice and smooth, they go in different directions. Got it? That's why it's called dense irregular. Now, if you back up, you can see it like layers of a cake. Okay? The layer of a cake is going in. If you look at, let's say we have a 7-layer cake. Just humor me here. If you look at the cake part, it's got little holes and crevices and stuff all over the place. Then you have a layer of frosting. It's nice and smooth. And then you go to the next one. It looks just like the last one. Then you have another layer of frosting. Yes? Those are called lines of cleavage, and I'll get to that really, really soon. Okay? But also you have blood vessels, glands, hair follicles, and nerves. Collagen bundles, lines of cleavage. I just talked about it, and I'm going to show you a picture of that. So if you're a plastic surgeon, you have this memorized. Your body is set out like a map. So if I backed up from you, I would be the cake. And I would have a layer, then I have frosting, a layer and frosting, layer and frosting. And each one of those layers is called a line of cleavage. And the frosting is where it meets. Okay, so a surgeon, if they cut in the direction of the, let's do it this way, they cut in the direction of the lines of cleavage, the repair is very quick and the scarring is very minimal. If they cut vertical or perpendicular to it, the healing process is longer because it's constantly being pulled apart. and the scarring is very pronounced. Stretch marks, wrinkles, and lines of cleavage. Okay, what's a stretch mark? A stretch mark is what happens is the dermal layer is stretching at a faster rate than the epidermis can cover it, and it has a break in it. So what you're seeing when you see the light color, you see that irregular thing, what you're seeing is the dermal layer easily visible to the eye through the epidermis. Wrinkles are from the lack of producing the dermal layer, the proteins collagen. As we get older, I told you about this, when we get older, we slow down the production of some proteins. Our immune system is not as good. One of the other things we don't produce, collagen. So when the collagen is not being produced, it isn't as thick, which means the epidermis on the outside starts to sag. Okay, now you can get it cut, but it's going to come back. Okay, all right, and then lines of cleavage we just talked about. Collagen and elastic fibers are oriented in parallel bundles. So you have the collagen going in a different direction, and they're connected with elastic, and there's a layer, then there's another layer, and another layer. Okay, that's the way your body is set up. Not front to back, top to bottom. That way it has elasticity and reduces stress to the skin. Okay, lines of cleavage, I've already talked about it. I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. Clinical importance, we talked about surgically cutting in the direction of line of cleavage and against the line of cleavage. Okay, one is going to take longer. Stria or stria or stria, that means stretch marks. Okay, somebody that has gained a lot of weight really quick or lost it right away, lines of cleavage. You used to see it in the arm, in the thighs. Many times females that become pregnant and give birth, they'll get stretch marks in their stomach because the skin's stretching at such a fast rate, the epidermis can't keep up and it tears. Ultraviolet light exposure and aging reduce flexibility and thickness of the dermis. I'm a prime example of it. Okay, I'm always outside, and my skin looks like it. Looks like leather. You've heard somebody having a leathery look. Okay, that's due to exposure to ultraviolet light. Okay, I don't have, my dermis is rapidly diminishing. Okay, here's the line of cleavage. Now, don't look at this. I want you to look at this. You see all the different lines? So if you make an incision right along here, the scarring will be minimal and it'll heal right away. If you make like this one right here. This is the incision. It's going against the layers of the cake. See the layers of the cake? Those are called lines of cleavage. And they're set up in the body. Everybody's body is exactly the same way. You see right down here, when you go down like this, okay, when you have a tummy tuck or when you have a cesarean, they cut it like this. The reason they cut it like that, scarring is minimal, healing is very quick. And you see how they go all over the body. Well, somebody that is an MD that deals with skin and cutting it away or surgery or scarring and stuff like that has these memorized. Got it? Okay. Okay. I think we did the lines of cleavage. Innervation and blood supply. Get rid of the in. See, nervation, nerve. What is in the nerve? Where is the nerve? Innervation. What nerve goes to it? And blood supply. That's always in the dermis. Got it? Always in the dermis. Now, if you remember in lab, I had you look at Meissner's corpuscle, which is up in the dermal papilla, and Pacinian corpuscle, which is right next to the subcutaneous layer. Do you remember? If you don't remember, stop this video and go back and look, because they're distinct. Another word for Pacinian is lamellated, lamellated. Another word for Meissner's is tactile. And that leaves Ruffini and Merkel. Merkel is another one that's in between in the dermal layer. We didn't talk about this yet, but we're talking about it now. Merkel is another nerve ending that that determines three-dimensional stuff. So if you pick up this pin, for an example, and you don't look at it, and you hold it back here, and you twirl it around in your hand, can you feel the different shapes? Yes. Well, in order for you to feel the different shapes, something has got to be telling your brain, hey, I am stimulated. And that is Merkel's nerve endings, okay? Merkel's corpuscle. Ruffini is stretch. Now you can take your hand and stretch it, and you can feel it, yeah? Or you can take your hand and go like this, or your skin, and pull it up like, ouch, damn, that hurt. You can pull it like that. That's Ruffini sending that message. Function, okay? Obviously, touch receptors. Meissner's touch. Control blood flow. Thermal regulations are in your dermal layer. Okay, there's got to be something that triggers it. So we also have nerve endings. We talked about Meissner's, Pacini. Oh, that's all that's there. No, now we know there's Ruffini and Merkel also, and they have a function. We also have thermal receptors in there. And you figure like when I'm cold, I just have more stimulation from temperature. No, it's like a thermometer. You have some that trigger at 68, some at 67, 65, 62, 60, 40, so on and so forth. And what they do is when the temperature gets down to that, those are being stimulated and they're sending it to the brain. Hey, man, it's really cold out here. And you have it on the opposite side from 72 up, nothing between 68 and 72. So after 72, you start the warming one. Got it? Pretty cool, huh? Glandular secretion, when those are stimulated, okay, it's hot. You guys are outside now. You out do something, and all of a sudden, man, you're pouring down sweat. Why are you sweating? You're sweating because you're putting water, mostly water, 90% water, 10% waste, to your skin through sweat glands. It gets to your skin. The air, ambient temperature, the air takes it away and leaves, as it evaporates, it leaves the skin very cool. Step 2, you vasodilate your blood vessels. So you take the blood vessels and you open them up so blood rushes to the surface, why people get flushed. And as it goes up there, all of a sudden it goes, oh man, it's cold there. And then it gets cold and it goes down to the body and cools the temperature. As long as you're sweating, you can cool the temperature. If you run out of sweat, you run out of water, then you can't cool the body and you end up getting heat stroke like I did. I had heat stroke. Yes, I had a stroke. Okay, so when I say something I don't mean to say, I had a stroke. But it did screw me up. And I did know it. I'm out in the 110 temperature and I ran out of water and I knew it. And I'm thinking, I just got to finish mowing the lawn. By then it was too late. I was jacked up. Should have went to the hospital. Anyway, be careful. Dermis contains blood vessels. We talked about that. You've seen it under your microscope. It supplies the avascular epidermis. It doesn't supply all the epidermis, just stratum basala. Important in cooling body temperature. I just told you how that works. Through your blood, two things: sweat, blood. Gotta have them both. Vasoconstriction. Now, when your skin is very cold, the last thing you want to do is run blood up to it and make it colder and come back and freeze the interior of the body. So what you do is you have vasoconstriction to your skin. That's how you hear sometimes people have gangrene. Gangrene means the blood supply has been cut off for so long, the cells are dying or dead. Okay. Now, when you want the blood to go to someplace, you have vasodilation. And in sweating, you have vasodilation, and in cold temperatures, you have vasoconstriction to the skin. You also have vasodilation and vasoconstriction to your digestive tract. Okay, we'll get into that when we do digestion. Vasodilation. Okay, dilate to widen, constriction to narrow. Okay, all right. Now we're going to talk about the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. Okay, so I want you to stop the computer and I want you to think, what did we talk about with subcutaneous layer and hypodermis? Okay, come back when you're ready. Okay, now you've come back. You remember that the hypodermis is not part of the skin integumentary system, but we always talk about it there. We also said that it is composed of lipids, adipose tissue, and areolar connective tissue. If you have very little fat, you can see muscle differentiation really, really good. If you have a lot of fat, you don't. Everything's nice and rounded. What is the function of the subcutaneous layer? Protection, yes. Warmth and protection of the underlying tissues, which is your muscle. Warmth, okay, which we call thermoregulation. And remember, I talked about homeothermic versus poikiothermic, okay? And the third one is a sense of, is a future ATP source. We can take fat, break it down very quickly and produce a lot of ATP, which the cell uses as the only source of energy. It's deep to the integument. Got it now? Because it's not part of the integument, so it's deep to the integument. It's also deep to the dermis, huh? Not actually part of the integument. Composed of areolar and adipose connective tissue. Function: protects underlying structures. We just talked about that. Stores energy. We just talked about it. Thermal insulation. Just talked about it. Are we good? Good. Okay. Here's that same picture we had before, but separating the epidermis from the dermis to the subcutaneous layer. Okay. Boys say girls like chocolate. This is areolar papillary layer. This is a blood vessel. This is the reticular layer. Both of these are the dermis. And this is the subcutaneous or hypodermis with areolar and adipose. Good? And over here, it tells you the specific layer. See, I haven't broken down it for you. And then here's the description of what they do. This is a good one to print and put it on your notes. Okay, now we're getting down towards the end. It says integumentary structures derived from the epidermis. Integumentary structures derived from the epidermis. Structures that are epidermal derivatives. Nails, fingernails. What are those for? First thing, what is a fingernail made out of? Is it cells? Answered, nope. It's made out of keratin. Remember the skin, keratin? But it's real thick. Anatomically, genetically, we make it really, really thick and hardened. And we call it a fingernail. Horses call it a hoof. Okay? But it's a derivative of the epidermis. Okay? And it protects the underlying soft skin and gives it rigidity. I'm going to show you like this. So when I push up on this, if I didn't have a fingernail, my finger would bend up like that. and I couldn't grip things very good. But with the fingernail, it offers resistance. Kind of like, I don't know. Anyway, hair. This is a sad time, okay? I like hair. I don't have any, okay? Okay? I should sue the shampoo company for discriminating against me. That's supposed to be funny. All right, hair, made out of keratin. It's not cells. The cells are down inside your scalp. The hair is protein going up. The stronger and the more elastic the protein, the longer your hair. Got it? Exocrine glands of the skin. Remember, you have endocrine and exocrine, two types of glands. Exocrine have ducts, endocrine do not. Endocrine produce hormones and drop it into your blood or the lumen. Exocrine, sweat glands, oil glands. Another word for sweat, sudoriferous. Another word for oil is sebaceous. Okay? Those are also found as derivatives of the epidermis. Nails. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, not say much, I'm going to show you, then I'm going to show you a picture and point out the things I want you to know. Okay. Modification of the stratum corneum, you know what that is. Boys say girls like chocolate. Nail plate, nail body, nail root. Okay. You have a free edge. I'm going to show you this. It's better to show you. And a nail bed. And a nail matrix. This is where it grows, back up in here. That's where it grows. Lunula. You'll notice that sometimes you have like a moon. Well, that moon, scientific word for moon is lunar. Lunula is that moon-shaped piece right there. Okay, here we go. Fingernail, free edge. Free edge. Now, this is a normal nail. This isn't one that you get from a nail shop. Okay, this is the nail body, the whole thing, nail body. Now you see Nysium. Do you see it? Epo is above. That's this piece right here. Sometimes you call it the cuticle, but that's the one that you see sometimes when you go, if you take care of your nails to make them look good, you push it back up. That's the eponysium, cuticle. Eponysium goes all the way around here. This person had very manicured nails. Hyponysium is underneath it. So if you go to the free edge, underneath it, the skin is attached to it. You've felt it when all of a sudden you catch something and it pulls it up and it hurts really bad. What you've done is you've torn the hyponysium. I'm trying to get my arrow. The hyponysium is right up underneath here. The nail bed overlies the skin. The nail bed overlies the skin. The matrix is what produces the cells that produce the protein, and it's the nail root is where it comes up, starts at. So the cells here, the matrix is producing the root cells that produce the nail. It's the same thing for hair. They just changed the name a little bit. Okay? So you see the nail bed is the skin underneath it. The nail bed is the skin underneath it. Okay? All right. Hair. Columns of keratins growing in follicles. Now, whenever you see the word follicle from now throughout anatomy, follicle is a house that contains something. We have an ovarian follicle that is a house that contains the ova, the egg. We have a hair follicle that contains the hair root. Got it? Okay. Follicles, a house. We have different types of hair. Lanugo, vellus, and terminal hair. Humans really just have a little bit of lanugo and terminal hair. Dogs and cats, when you take their guard hair away, you can see a bunch of fluffy hair. That's the vellus. Regions of the hair. Hair bulb. I'm going to show you a picture like I did with the fingernail. Hair root, hair shaft. These two are easy. Root, you can't see. The shaft is what you comb. Got it? So once the root breaks the surface of the skin, it's no longer called a root, it's called a shaft. Okay, I'm going to show you that. 3 zones that make up the hair: hair bulb, hair root, hair shaft. I threw one other one in, a bulb, and I'm going to show you a picture. Hair follicles surround each hair, and merging with every single hair follicle is a sebaceous gland, an oil gland, that keeps the hair moist, flexible, so it doesn't break off. Got to go away from us. Look at mammals. We're just a type of mammal. Hair is there for a reason. Really important. One is thermal regulation. The more hair you have, the warmer you can be, along with adipose tissue. It also signals something. If you see this, you got a dude, hopefully. Okay, you got a dude. Okay, also when a person's mad, you see how it changes? Other animals like baboons, they show you different colors. What about a dog? You go to say, oh, nice doggy. And you go to pet it and its hair stands up. What do you say? Never mind. Got the message. The dog sent a message using its hair. Got it? Okay. Erector pili, I showed you that before. Right at the base of the bulb is a muscle that's up on a diagonal. So here's your hair follicle, and here's the muscle. So when this muscle contracts, say your hair's laid down like this. Hair's laid down like this. When this muscle contracts, the hair stands up. Okay? So the reason your hair stands up is to send a signal like the dog, or to create more surface area underneath it. So you got to get away from us. Look at other mammals. When you see them in the wintertime, they're all fluffy, huh? They have more hair. Your dog grows hair, your cat grows hair, but they're fluffier. And that's because if they fluff up, they can trap the heat underneath, and for thermal regulation. The erector pili is the muscle that does that. Okay, goosebumps. Reason you have a goosebump, here's your hair. Here's your skin, and here's your hair. When the hair stands up like that, it pushes the skin on this side and it makes it rise up. And that's called a goosebump. And there's a scientific name for it. It's Anser, A-N-S-E-R something. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, hair. Here's the picture. Now, scanning electron microscope, 260 times. Remember, I bring this up because you see what the scanning electron microscope does. This is keratin. That's the shaft. The root is down there. Okay, here's the bulb. Here's the bulb. This is a follicle. You see the follicle here? It has nothing to do with the hair. It's just a house for it. Here's the erector pili muscle we talked about for the hair standing up. And what you don't, yeah, here it is. See right here? This is sebaceous gland that's dumping into the follicle, dumping oil. And that oil then keeps this very elastic so this can grow longer. If you don't bathe and you just let it keep going, pretty soon you start noticing smell. Because in oil is a food source for bacteria. Bacteria eat the oil and they give you a nice present after, odor. Got it? So what we do, especially in Western cultures, is we wash all that off and then we apply what we want to do the same thing. Conditioner is just a wax. It's an oil. Yeah. They keep it flexible. So if you constantly wash your hair, which is a good thing, constantly wash your hair, make sure you make it replenish that conditioner. Okay. I don't have to worry about that. You know how long it takes me to comb my hair at night, in the morning? I wipe it twice with a towel and I'm done. Okay, so there, nanner. Down here you see the matrix. The matrix is got a blood supply and it's going through mitosis and it's making the cells that's producing the protein, keratin, that makes the root. Got it? And here's what it would look like microscopically. Okay, this is the matrix, the cells that are doing it, and it shows cuticle and all that stuff like it did with the fingernail. And this works its way up, and it's nothing more than a protein. If this goes all the way to the top, this is what you see coming out. Functions of hair, protection. If I don't wear a hat, I'm constantly bonking my head on something. In fact, I got a little indentation here when I hit a 2x4 because I came up too fast. Okay. If I had hair As soon as you start hitting the hair, you can feel it. And your body says, wait a minute, I feel something. And then you back down, you realize you're just about ready to hit something. I don't have that. So I put a hat on as synthetic hair. Got it? So for protection, heat retention, I can feel it. I remember the first time I shaved my head. I'm walking. In fact, I was walking to campus and I could feel every breath, every little tiny temperature difference I could tell. After a while, I think I went brain dead. I couldn't feel it anymore. Sensory reception. Okay, we just talked about that. Protection, sensory reception kind of goes together. Visual identification. I talked about this. Okay, females characteristically don't have facial hair. Okay, dudes do. So if you see somebody has facial hair, it usually represents males. Got it? Chemical signal dispersal. You ever see your dog, you're out walking your dog, and it comes up to another dog? It doesn't stick out its little paw and says, hi, my name's Fluffy, what is yours? Oh, my name's Spot. What they do is they sniff each other's rear end, don't they? Now, what are they doing? Sniffing poo? No. They have anal glands back there, and those anal glands send out a signal. Mammals send signals called pheromones. I'll show you how that's spelled in a minute. Pheromones, and that sends out a message. You know, your dog is a female. It's out in the backyard, minding her own business, and all of a sudden you hear a bunch of scratching and howling outside. You look, and there's 10 male dogs out there wanting to play with your Fifi, don't they? How did they know that? How did they know your dog came in a cycle? Because they put out a chemical smell called a pheromone that can be smelled by animals, but not us. And you can smell it. Got it? So there's all kinds of chemicals that are being produced that sends things. Hey, I want to breed. I don't want to breed. I'm a boy. I'm a girl. My name is Fluffy. All those things. Yes, warning ones. You see your dog go by and you're taking it for a little walk, and every tree it goes by, it gives a little, it's like a little squirt or something, like it's peeing, but only a little bit. No, it's sending out a thing. Hey, this is my territory. Stay away. Okay? Anyway, chemical signal, pheromones. 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 Mammals produce pheromones, which are chemical signals that signal something. Got it? Exocrine glands of the skin. There are two types. We're almost done. You can pause this at any time. Two types. Sweat glands, also called sudoriferous. See the two names? Sudoriferous means sweat glands. You're going to see in a minute we have two different types. Okay. It says produce watery solution. And there are two types, miracrine or eccrine. Miracrine or eccrine, E-C-C-R-O-C-R-I-N-E. Miracrine, eccrine, and apocrine. Apocrine, the way to remember that is axilla. Your armpit is your axilla. Apocrine stink. They're the ones that merge in with a sweat gland, with an oil gland that produce the odor we know as sometimes pheromones. Got it? But once you dump water into oil, you have just made a nice big breakfast for bacteria. So there was places on our body that underneath the arms, around the areola, in the groin area, and in the anal area that have apocrine sweat glands there. They produce water that mixes with oil glands that produce a substance that bacteria turn it into odor. In some cultures, that odor is good. In other cultures, they think, whoo, that stink, go take a shower and put on synthetic, like we do in the Western culture. Okay, miracrine is to cool you. Miracrine is nothing more than sweat glands that go straight to the surface. They do not merge with a sebaceous gland. Oil glands, sebaceous glands. We talked about what that does, correct? Keeps your hair pliable. Miracrine sweat glands. Okay, what that says, it's a coiled tubular gland that releases secretions directly to the skin through pores. That's to cool the body, and we talked about how that works. 99% of it's water, a little bit of it's urine, okay? Controlled by the nervous system. So when you get hot, the nervous system causes it to constrict, squirts the fluid to the surface. Palms of hands, soles of feet, forehead, plenty of them there. Function, thermal regulation, thermal temperature regulation. Good? Secretion. Remember I said about 10% secretion, even though this makes it only 1%, but it's actually 90-10. Protection. Okay, protects the skin from drying out, protects you from overheating. Good. Apocrine. Remember apocrine, axilla. That's the one that smells, gives you the odor. Armpits, axilla, nipples, areola, groin, pubic region, anus, anal region. Those are where you find apocrine sweat glands. You don't find it on your arm. Produces proteins and lipids. Proteins, lipids come from the sebaceous gland. Proteins comes from it. Bacteria like those. There's the word pheromones. Okay? Only mammals. Birds get their identification through sight, color, and song. Mammals don't talk too much. They put it out by scent. Got it? There you go. Sebaceous glands, oil glands. Sebum. Okay. If you've seen somebody that's very obese and they have rolls, when you move those rolls apart, you'll see like a white chalky substance in there. Okay, they'll also probably have red irritations, but the white substance is a combination of oil, sweat, and cells and bacteria. Diaper rash, kind of like that. That is called sebum. You have it in the rolls. So if you're a nurse and you have a patient that's obese and they're laying down on a gurney or laying down on a bed, and you have to do an EKG, EKG has to stick against the skin. Well, they got all this oil sebum there, right? So you take your little alcohol swab and you wipe it across there and that person levitates. How come? Because that's raw skin, man. The bacteria have been feeding on that oil, protein, oil, water, and it has an odor, but that chalky stuff is called sebum. And we produce it in different places in the body, okay? Lubrication prevents drying. The ultimate job of water is to cool the body. The ultimate job of sebaceous gland is to keep the hair from drying out. Got it? But you put the two together and you're giving food to bacteria, which is why we bathe. Okay? Keep that off. When we are in childhood, we don't really have a lot of oil being produced, okay? Because we're still growing. Once we hit that puberty, all of a sudden the little boys start smelling like iron and stinking, and the girls aren't much better. That's because they've reached puberty and they're producing more oils. Sometimes we get skin blemishes, zits and stuff like that because you get a buildup of oil being produced. It closes off and forms a pimple. Exocrine endocrine glands, I think is a picture. Yeah, okay, this is a good one. We don't have this on the model in lab. This is a merocrine or eccrine gland. You see how it goes to the surface? Just carrying water to cool it down. This is an apocrine. You see how it comes over here and merges with the follicle, meets with the sebaceous gland and brings oil, protein, and water to the surface. Right here is bacteria. Apocrine, merocrine, sebaceous, follicle, root, shaft. In a microscope, sebaceous. Looks like a bunch of bubbles. And you heard me probably say that in the lecture. Looks like a whole bunch of bubbles. Okay. This is apocrine. Okay. It's one single layer big. And this is merocrine. It'll be several layers. That is the tube or duct that takes it to the surface. Okay. That's called a lumen, an opening. Lumen. Lumen of the apocrine gland is much larger. Okay, here's a table showing apocrine sweat glands, merocrine sweat glands, sebaceous glands. Ceruminous, okay, cerumen is earwax. Our ear canal, the auditory canal, is set up with cells that produce thicker oil we call wax. It is to protect the eardrum tympanic membrane. Those are called ceruminous glands, which are just specialized glands to produce wax. Mammary glands, I don't think I need to tell you, those are modified sweat glands that we produce milk. And then apocrine, anal, told you about that stuff, viscous, stinks, that kind of stuff. And it says signaling, communication, pheromones. And then merocrine says cools the body. There we go. I'm going to post this for you. Stop video. Stop share. And